Welcome to the Insurance Producers Podcast, where we bring you the top personalized producers, insurance agents, and industry partners, giving you at least 3 takeaways to 10x your production and build your multi-million-dollar revenue books. So sit back, relax, and become inspired by the success stories and strategies of the world's top insurance minds. Let's roll. All right, welcome back, everybody. My name is Cyrus Jaffery, your host, Insurance Producers Podcast, another episode. Man, I am so excited today. My boy, Mick Hunt, man. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thanks for having me on, man. Good to connect. Good to
Absolutely. I haven't connected with Mick in a while, and we worked on a couple of things about a year ago or so. And then when our technology company, Quotamation, was up and running, he's a guy we called to kind of say, "Hey, give me some feedback on what you think about the product and everything." Is a lot of people in the insurance industry obviously know Mick, and man, I'm so excited for him to share his wisdom. He's worked with a lot of producers across the country, so man, this is an episode that I am super excited for.
Let's go get it.
Let's do it, man. So let's just kind of go back really quick, make just a minute or two of just a background. What kind of got you into the insurance industry, and what are you up to today?
Yeah, so I got into the insurance industry literally the day I graduated college. So I started working for a nationwide insurance agent as a sales manager. And after about 6 or 7 years, I realized I was helping build a dream. And kind of like Martin Luther King Jr., I had dreams on my own, right? So I wanted to start my own agency. So I started an agency from scratch. No mergers, no acquisitions. After 3 years, that agency was over almost 3.5 million of revenue. So we're talking revenue, not premium.
Wow.
Wasn't looking to sell, but a big conglomerate made me an offer I couldn't refuse. So I went to go head up a brokerage where I inherited about 50 million of revenue, and in 4 years grew that to 70. And at that point, I said, you know what? I want to help agents, producers, account executives, account managers understand growth, right? Because I'll never say growth is easy, but scaling isn't hard. When you're focused on the right things and you really treat your business, like a company, scaling becomes the end result if you do the right thing. So started Premier Strategy Box as a way to help agency principals with growth. We do a ton of sales initiatives, sales training, sales accountability with producers. We just started doing a lot with account managers. And then obviously we help agencies with processes, automation, and development as well. But that's my passion, is helping people get to a place of success, whatever success looks like for them, whether you're agency principal, producer, or whatnot. Like that's my goal.
That's cool. So correct me if I'm wrong. So started with an agency at Nationwide, left 6 or 7 years, and then opened up your own brokerage, got it up to 3.5, 4 million in revenue, and then had an opportunity for somebody to come in, obviously. So let's go a little bit deeper into that, man. Like, I'm assuming, were you when you first went on your own, were you a one-man shop, or did you hire a couple producers? How did that?
No, I started out of the gate with a producer and an account manager.
Very cool.
I knew day one, it can't be me. It can't solely be me.
Cool. And then you went to work. Obviously, you were producing, and you were kind of building this thing, right? So put on your producer hat, man. What were those first 2 years or 3 years or whatever like? Like, what was your systems? What were your processes? Were you waking up? I got to make this many calls to see this many people. Like, dig a little bit deeper on those first couple of years for me.
Yeah, man. So my process, literally my mindset was, I need to be in front of people. I need to be in front of decision makers. So, this is what I did with myself and every producer that worked for me in my agency and the producers that we coach now. Step one is you've got to have a niche market. You've got to know who your ideal client is. What do they look like? What do they feel like? And where do they hang out? Because you need to make sure that you're visibly in front of them as often as you can be. So step one is know your ideal client. And step two is to figure out how to be in front of them. I'm never going to tell you that you need to make X number of calls per day or per week, and it's going to yield X number of closes. Like, anyone that tells you that is BS, because every niche market's different, right? If I'm a producer who my year-end goal is $500,000 in revenue and my average revenue is 15, 20,000, that's a different volume than someone whose average revenue is 2,500. And there's no wrong thing about 2,500. It's
Absolutely.
just different. So you naturally need to be in front of more people, right? So my thing is know who my ideal client is. Where do they hang out? What associations are around that? Go join associations and go be visible. And results are going to happen whether you want to or not. Because again, I could tell you make 100 calls, but if you're calling the wrong people, it's not going to mean anything.
100%.
Right. So that's my method. Get in front of people. Like figure out how to be visible. That's the key to success.
Yeah. How did you come up with your niche mark? I know you talk about niche, right? So, and I know you're big on that because I hear you all the time talking about it. So, what kind of niche were you focusing on, and why did you focus on that?
Yeah, so my personal niche as a producer was regional franchise restaurants because I could speak the language. Like I knew that there was enough education that I could find for myself. I could have conversations with carriers and programs. So I engulfed myself in that because it was a natural conversation. So I always tell salespeople this, like find something you love and master it, right? Because at the end of the day, you want to have conversations with people that you actually enjoy being around. And then the second part of that is also whatever you love, make sure that your carrier partners or broker partners can write that. Because, I've got a guy that loves aviation, but they don't have a market for it. So first step is find something you love. And then step two is what revenue do you want? So for me, for my agency, our average revenue was $15,000 per account. Like to get into the door for us to have a conversation, that's what you had to look like. So again, there's a difference between a $15,000 revenue restaurant and a $5,000 revenue restaurant. So I made sure that I was looking for the $15,000 revenue restaurants. And so that's what I focused on. I had producers. One of my producers did excavation contractors. I had another producer that did nothing but new home construction and the subs that kind of went with that. And then I had someone who did transportation. And that's all that my agency did.
Very cool. That's awesome, man. Yeah, it's kind of one of those things where you don't want to be like, because I was a State Farm agent for 6 years, man, and we were told, hey, you got to write auto insurance, home insurance, health insurance, mutual funds. You got to do mortgages, and then you got to do this, and you got to do. And I'm like, and then I came to a point where like I was literally very bad at all of them. Because like it's impossible for you to master 9 or 10 things, right? Like you can build a team around it and all of that stuff, but it's impossible. And then when I was in my second year at State Farm, we were basically told in 2014, go find as many cold wizard leads and all these all web leads and just call these people, sell them auto insurance. Like that's how every State Farm agent ran their agency, was like you cold call, cold call, cold call. I'm like, that is wild. I was like, why don't we just do homes? Like, why don't people just like do homes? Like, cause in 2014, not a lot of people did. And then I was like, okay, so where do you go find home leads? Kind of what you said, like figure out what your niche is. So ours is homeowners insurance, right? Like that's all we write. That's where all of our business, 95% of our business are homeowners. And then I was like, okay, so now we know that's an easier product to sell because everybody else is calling these freaking auto leads, right? So now I have an opportunity to go against homes. Then I was like, oh, like you said, like where is the next, like where do you get those home leads from? I'm like, well, mortgage lenders, real estate agents, they sell homes, and obviously, and then it's a life trigger, which makes it super easy because they're shopping around. So then I found out, okay, my niche is homeowners insurance, and where I get it from is from the real estate agents and mortgage officers. And then you go to work, man, go build those relationships, like you said. Then your idea becomes you're cold calling real estate agents and mortgage officers to send you clients versus calling clients, if that makes sense. Because one real estate agent can give me 10 leads versus one client can maybe give me one lead.
The law of large numbers, right? It's always going to be true. The law of large numbers. Get in front of the source, and then let the source be your way into where you want to go.
Yeah. So, okay. So you built your agency, man. You went to work, obviously built your agency, sold it. After that, you went and acquired, you said, a different brokerage. Okay. And you acquired, and then how many producers? What was that dynamic like?
Yeah, so it was an MGA type setup. So, collectively, we probably had over 30 producers that had their different niche markets and were funneling things through there. But yeah, so I mean, that same process, have a niche, right? Like we didn't allow anyone to have more than 2 niche markets because, Bruce Lee says, I fear not the man that has over 10,000 kicks. I fear the man that practices one kick 10,000 times, right? And so that's my thing with salespeople. Have your one kick. and practice it over and over and over again, because now you become dynamic. If all you do is home, to your point,
Mm-hmm.
then know freaking everything about home.
Mm-hmm.
And it becomes a lot easier. It becomes a
Mm-hmm.
lot easier for, you know, your quote process, your submission, like
Mm-hmm.
everything that you want to do in life becomes easier when you know one thing.
Yeah, and you can be extremely good at it. People ask us all the time. It's been 4.5 years since I've left State Farm, and 5 years or whatever. I think we've sold 12 life insurance policies as an agency.
Mm-hmm.
Like we just don't do it. And then on the commercial side, probably, I don't know, 30, 40 accounts on the commercial side. Other than that, like we
Yeah.
stick to our lane. But
Yeah.
we just hired a life insurance person. We say, our guys won't do it. I don't want them to do it, but we can hire somebody that strictly
Mm-hmm.
focuses on life insurance. Then we can just pass the torch over to them once we do the home and auto and they handle it. And then on the commercial side, hired a commercial specialist and their lane is commercial, like stick to it. We pass it on to them and then they do it. So I love that. Find your niche, find one or two things that you're really good at and stick to them. Right. And a lot of times, Mick, you're gonna have adversity, right? Like, and I know you, man, you're the king of this stuff. So I want to talk a little bit about mindset with you, right? Because what happens to a lot of producers is they do it for like a month, 2 months. This niche is fun. Oh, this is cool. 3 months, 6 months. 8 months come around, you kind of run into some adversity. They're not closing as much. They're like, they start doubting themselves, right? And I'm
Mm-hmm.
sure you have done this. You see producers that are doing this and they try
Mm-hmm.
to find other avenues to get quick things, right? And say instant gratification. Because
Mm-hmm.
I get it. They need to make money. They need to pay their bills. They have a family and all that stuff. What's
Yeah.
your advice when things like that happens to where you're not hitting your goals, you're not making the money you wanted, and early success was there, but now it's not. Now you're thinking like, is this really what I want to do?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I always tell people this, right? Like sometimes evolution has to happen within yourself, right? Nothing's ever going to be easy forever, right? We have to evolve. The industry is evolving today,
Mhm.
right? So you have to be able to evolve. You've got to be able to do some self-reflection. If it were easy, there'd be a million producers and salespeople. It's just not the case, right? Like you've got to be able to have the mindset of no matter what, I'm going to keep going. And I tell people this, and you know this because you've heard my podcast, right? So I always say it's great to start with your why, but you've got to be fueled by your because. So what's that reason that keeps you going every day? And you've got to be able to acknowledge that reason. I tell people take that reason. If it's preparing for college for your kids or funding something or buying the boat or whatever it is, put that freaking on a sticky note in front of you every day. Put it on your rearview mirror, right? Like that, because you have to always go back to that. Why am I doing it? What's the reason behind the reason that's making me get up and go, right? And then I also tell people this. You have to make sure success is something that you must have. When your must have is bigger than your want, when your must have is bigger than your need, then success is there. So for all the salespeople, all the producers that are listening, make sure that success is something that you must have. Because when those roadblocks come, that energy that you have internal, that uncomfortableness that you're feeling is your must have, trying to remind you that this is why you're doing it. So make sure success is something that you must have on a daily basis.
Man, I love that. To put it into our organization. So our average revenue is probably $750 to $1,000 per account, right? Because
Mhm.
ours is obviously we're on the personal lines, home and auto,
Right.
right? Like we do a
Right.
ton of them, right? But it's about $750 to $1,000. It's like $850 or something is our average account. So so what we must do on a daily basis, we tell our team is like, guys, this is our non-negotiables. Like this is the non-negotiable to where this the must have. Like we understand that you're going to have a bad day and a bad week, but the problem runs into effort. Like
Mhm.
if you do the things that we're telling you to do, which for us it's 25 CTEs, which is call, text, emails, which is just reaching out to prospect. It's like, hey, you got to be prospecting, because the day you stop prospecting, what you did was you ruined your tomorrow. Because when you
Mhm.
prospect for tomorrow and the week after. You don't prospect for today. So
Right.
the success that you had today was from a week ago. The
Mhm.
success you're going to have from a week from now is going to come from today. So if you're not doing the work today, you're going to have roadblocks later on. So you got to stick to the process. figure out your non-negotiables, man, and stick to it, because otherwise, man, this industry could eat you alive if you don't have a process on a daily basis. If you just wait for the phones to ring and people to call you because of your name and your brand and all that stuff, I mean, you could do it, but you got to be like a Mick Hunt, man. And there's not a lot of Mick Hunts around to be able to just drive traffic for things that you have done for the last so many years for the industry.
Right. Yeah, I totally agree with that. And one of the things, and I know you and I talked about it a year or so ago, I tell producers this too: don't have goals, have standards. Right? Goals are something that you're trying to achieve, and if you don't hit your goal, so what? Right? But you need to have standards, and your standards aren't just numerical or financial results, but your standards should also be in your habits. So I'm going to get in front of X number of people per day. That's my standard, right? Like, I believe in standards versus goals wholeheartedly. So my challenge to producers that are listening or watching: create some standards, right? Not just, your production, but also the habits that you're going to have and do every day as well.
Man, I love that, dude. I wrote that down because I'm going to use it, and I'm going to give you a shout out on our social media channel, because that's so good, man. Don't have goals, have standards, I mean, I love that. Okay, so got done with the brokerage side, then, right? Sold again for the second time, the MGA side, sold again. So, well, before I do that, I want to ask you, dude, because you went to why, right? Like, everybody's got their why, and everybody's whys are different. So a guy like Mick, man, you've had a couple of acquisitions, couple of companies that you have sold. Like, honestly, man, you're good, dude. Like, you've done what you've had to do, right? Like, you don't need, I mean, obviously everybody needs more money and all that stuff, but like, you're good with the thing. So, like, because I know it's not money right now for you, is what I'm assuming, or maybe it is, but like, what is your why? Why at this point in your life, with all the things that you have done, what wakes you up saying, man, I got to put all my pants on and go to work?
Yeah. So my because. So again, I go deeper than why. My because is multifaceted. It goes back to a promise that I made my mom at the age of 10, that I was going to be successful, that I was going to change lives. And so my because is the commitment to a promise that I made my mom, my sister, and my brother. And then when I had kids, it was creating a legacy. So again, my because is about the promises that I've made to people and fulfilling those promises. And if you know me, my word is my bond. If I promise and commit to something, that's what I'm going to do. And so my because, the reason that I wake up every morning, is because there's a group of 10 people that are in my tight circle, including family, that depend on me, not financially, but they just depend on me from a legacy perspective, a positive energy perspective. And that's what fuels me every single day.
Man, that's deep. I love that. Okay, so Premier Strategy Box came around right after, and that's kind of a part of your because, is what I'm assuming, because you wanted to help people, right? You're like, hey, man, like, my calling is to. And that's what I love about the podcasting and everything, man, because you impact so many different people when you have these podcasts. And when you are a person that we see a lot of these, like, there's probably 15, 20, 30 people in our industry, man, that like are kind of like the pioneers of the industry, right? They're doing things at a certain level that everybody looks up to. And it kind of drives a lot of other people that are maybe not at that stage. They're like, man, one day I want to be like Mick Hunt. One day I want to be like this other guy. One day I want to be like Jason Cass and make all these different changes, or blah, 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 whatever that is, all these other people. And so, like, what and I know it's because of because that you obviously wake up and do the things that you're doing. What was the reasoning? And I know the answer probably, but what was the exact reason behind the Premier Strategy Box, and where is it at right now?
Yeah, literally, Premier Strategy Box for me was a way to give back, right? It was a way to impart, I'm going to say, some experiences, some wisdom that I feel like I have into helping people scale. Like, for me, I'm a big numbers person, right? Like, I think big, I try to achieve big. My standard is big. And so Premier Strategy Box was just a way to help other people see that. Because when you look at your Fortune, I don't care if you're looking at Fortune 500, 1,000, 2,000, 2,500, whatever, most of the people that are in leadership and in sales all think big, right? It's big numbers, and that's why they get to the numbers that they have. And so I wanted to help people just think big, because I feel like our industry in particular, the insurance industry, it's an easy entry, right? But it's also a fast fail. And part of the reason that I think the failure is fast is because your partners teach you to think small. They talk to you in small increments. But if you could just think big and figure out the path to big, success happens. And so that's why I created Premier Strategy Box. It's just that way to think big, have processes that are big, have sales strategies that are big.
Yeah. So Premier Strategy Box, and then I want to talk a little bit about the podcasting, right? And I know me and you talked a little bit before, and you mentioned that even like in January, February, you really didn't want to do a podcast, but like something drove you to say, listen, like with all the things that I've done, with all the knowledge that I've gained for the last so many years being in the industry, man, it's almost like you're calling to do a podcast, and it's not towards insurance
No.
at all. It's more mindset and stuff like that. So yeah, share a little bit about the podcast, man. I want everybody to hear about it because, man, it's one of the best podcasts, and I want everybody to hear it for sure. So.
Well, I appreciate the shout out for that. But yeah, you and I were talking, and I didn't want to do a podcast, right? Like I just felt like, I don't know, like it's hard for me to do something that I wasn't overly passionate about, right? So starting a podcast wasn't my thing, but my mentor, Les Brown, in our industry, Daniel Song and Ryan Hanley, like every other day they were like, Mick, do a podcast, Mick, do a podcast. And I didn't want to because nothing was ever going to be about me, right? Like Premier Strategy Box isn't about me. My agency,
right?
Nothing I've ever done in life is about me.
Right.
And so I said, if I do a podcast, then I want to make sure that I have guests that not just that have stories, but can give action, just like you do your podcast, right? Like if there's a breakaway, if there's a takeaway, if there's 2 or 3 things that we could give the listener or the viewer, that's what's important to me. And I don't want it to come from me. And so that's the premise. It's everyone has a because, everyone has overcome something. And I don't mean dramatic overcoming, just everyday life, right? Like every day there's an obstacle. Every month there's an obstacle that normal people overcome. And so I want to talk to people about those things in life. And that's what the podcast is about. So it really is just people that maybe a lot of people that you don't know that just get a chance to tell their story, but more importantly, the things that they do to overcome different things in life. And to me, that's what life is about. It's about how do you respond to the obstacle? Because I don't care how much money you have or how much money you don't have, there's obstacles every day.
100%. I think it's funny because as you deal with obstacles, like you build calluses, right? And I think maybe you know this, but our house got bombed in Afghanistan when I was 2 years old, and I'm in the house. My mom is in the house, and somehow we're here. And then we go to a helicopter, and we get in this helicopter to go to Pakistan to escape from Afghanistan because there was a war with the Taliban coming in the early 90s. And our helicopter got hit, and 5 other ones got hit, and they fell in the Kabul River, and none of them, I'm sure, survived. We go to Pakistan and lived there for 12 years, came here as a refugee in 2002 as a 14-year-old, knowing no English. And I'm like, all right, let's make this USA thing happen. Like, what the hell am I doing here, first of all? And as I went through that early stages of my life, man, the calluses that I built. So now I look back, I'm like, and I hear some people's adversity today, and I'm like, hey man, listen, you're going to be okay. If that was the worst thing that happened to you was like your kid being sick or you got in a car accident or whatever, like you're healthy, you're up, you woke up, like there's a reason for all these things. And I truly believe I put this perspective in you, Mick. I'm curious on your thoughts on this. You golf?
I hit the ball.
I hit the ball.
What I do, it would disrespect the game of golf if we call that golf.
If we call that golf. So I'm an avid golfer. So I think of golf this way. Every time I golf, I know I'm going to hit 6 bad shots. And I just know no matter how good you are at anything, you're going to have 6 bad shots. And I'm like, if I could just, I have that in my mind. So when I have a bad shot in golf, all I'm thinking is, oh, okay, now I got 5 more left. Once I get through those 5, then I know my round is going to be good because I'm going to have many good shots. I'm going to have hundreds of good shots. Well, hopefully not 100 because then it'd be a really bad score. I'm going to have, a lot of good shots and I'm going to have 6 bad shots. And what's funny is
a lot of people dwindle over those 6 bad shots that ruin their other 80 good shots. So you literally thought about those 6 shots way more than the 80 good shots you had. And all you're thinking about after the round is the bad shots versus, so in life, it's the same thing, man. You're going to run into things. And as you go through the day, you're like, I'm going to have 2 or 3 bad things today. That's going to happen. Adversity. Hey, check that off. On to the next one. Check that off. It's just going to make life, put life into perspective that everybody deal with it. It's just some people like me and you are like, we're just going to deal with it and we're going to go right through it. Versus the other way around where we're just going to sit in a room and be like, man, why did that happen to me? That big account, 100,000 in revenue left me. Like my life is going to end. Like it's okay. It's okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, so let's go a little bit deeper onto the producers here, because I really want to make sure the producers kind of understand in your type of business that you're in right now, man. What are, and you could put it into perspective as far as like the producers, the top producers in the industry. You could put it into perspective with people like Merrill Hodge, like Les Brown. What do those people do? What do the greats do? If you could put it into 1 or 2, what did the great in their craft do that the average people in that industry do not do?
Yep. So here's one piece of advice I'm giving every producer, because I literally had this conversation with both Les and Merrill, who you mentioned. Every successful salesperson, every successful business person, every successful individual that I know has a mentor or mentors. Find a mentor or mentors, because it's going to help you in more ways than one. You know, I talked about early on when I started in insurance and I was helping someone, I was joking saying build their dream, but he was my mentor. So Mark Vitale, and I don't mind saying his name, Mark Vitale probably taught me 50% of what I know and do today in business, because he was willing to be not just my boss, but also my mentor. So we could have calls before work, after work, go over to his house, even to this day, having calls. And I'll say also in his bloodline, right? His son, Nick Vitale, who you should probably have on the podcast, by the way, but Nick, an amazing leader, because I'm sure he got the same mentorship from his dad, and then also mentors outside. So producers, find a mentor. It's going to help you. Second piece of advice, keep your circle tight. Have people in your circle that are going to push you, not just pat you on the back. And I know we all need pats on the back every once in a while, but keep your circle tight, because when you're in sales, it's a dog eat dog business. Right? Like there's no way around that. Sales is a what have you done for me lately business. People get amnesia when the new year starts, or the new quarter starts, the new month starts, right? Like even Cyrus gets amnesia. Cyrus has an amazing producer, January, February. Come April, it's like, great, what have you done for me lately? Keep your circle tight, because you need people that are going to always push you into the right places.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. That's a great advice, especially, and this is not just insurance. This is anybody that's in the sales industry, anybody in general, man. Those are things that you definitely have to keep in mind. I'm curious on what was your biggest lesson, man, that you have learned from Les Brown?
Wow. There's so much that I learned from Les, but I would always say with Les, we talk about what's your legacy going to be. And so every day we build towards a legacy. And I can relate that to me being a young producer, right? Like, what am I trying to do? What legacy am I leaving behind? Because if you focus on that, if you know that, you're going to do the right things. And so with Les, it's Mick, focus on your legacy. Focus on your legacy.
That's cool. So I do want to mention one thing, and then I want to end with one thing. But you said that 50% of what you learned was from I believe you said Vitale. Mark Vitale. And I would promise everybody in this podcast that the other 50% was probably learned from different people. Like Mick didn't wake up one day, it's like, I'm going to do all these things, or I'm going to put this systems and processes. And I say this all the time, man, somebody has got it figured out. You don't need to go invent the wheel. You just need to reach out. I feel like there's all these people that your Daniel, you talked about, your Ryan, man, I've had all of them on the podcast, and they're all like, Cyrus, reach out. have anybody, I don't care, you're a producer in Pennsylvania that just started and they just listened to my reach out. I feel like a lot of people, you in general, me, and all these people that are in this industry, that they want to give back. And we've learned from other people that have given back to us. So finding a mentor is one piece of it, obviously, that you should. But other than that, man, just reach out. I didn't just wake up one day and said, I'm going to have 130 people in my organization and blah, blah, blah. And you didn't. It just happened because you put systems and processes in place and things you've learned from other people and put your twist to it. Am I right or wrong?
Wholeheartedly, you're correct. That's the key. That's the key. Now, I'll say don't emulate people, but definitely reach out and find the pieces that you need from people.
Absolutely. Sure. Absolutely. So this podcast, one of the questions we ask at the end, I want to make sure you don't have, well, first of all, before we end, I do want to make sure that you can, so where can people find Premier Strategy Box? Where can people find your podcast? You want to share a little bit about that just in case people want to?
Yeah. So for me personally, Mick Unplugged everywhere. There's Mick Unplugged. That's me. Premier Strategy Box is mystrategybox.com. And we're also on LinkedIn under Premier Strategy Box, but Mick Unplugged and Premier Strategy Box.
Beautiful.
Anywhere. That's where we are.
Beautiful. So win the day. That's one of the things that I focus on. And we finished this podcast with this question. And for me, there are 4 things I do. I don't need to go deep into that. There's 4 things I do on a daily basis that, like, if I do these things, like I know that, like, I put my head on the pillow and I'm like, man, okay, cool. Like that, I won that day. Like there is no, and I lose too, but I don't lose twice. I try to. I never lose twice. I lose all the time. I try to not lose twice. What is 1 or 2 things that Mick does on a daily basis, personal, professional, whatever you want to share, that you're like, man, this is kind of a non-negotiable for me every day?
Yeah. So one thing I do at the end of every day is I have 10 minutes of introspection. And I ask myself this: did I give the most that I had today? And to your point, sometimes the answer is no, right? Like I don't lie to myself, right? But then there's one thing that I always make sure that I do at least once every day. And that is I set tomorrow's version of myself up for success. And that could be anything as simple as prepping and making notes for a meeting that I'm going to have. It could be as simple as, pulling out the clothes I'm going to wear tomorrow, because tomorrow's version of me is going to thank me, right, for doing that. So find something that you can set tomorrow's version of yourself up for success, that tomorrow's you would say, thank you. And I make sure I do that every single day.
Man, I love that. I love that. For me, it's lunch, dude. I don't want to think about lunch. I don't want to, I just get this thing in the fridge and when I walk out, I grab it and I go. Cause I don't want to waste time thinking about what I'm going to have for lunch and order it. And it just takes.
And today's version of you appreciates that
every day. Every day. I'm like, oh, lunch is there. Put it in the microwave for a minute, 2 minutes, and I'm done. Like, I don't need to think about it, if that makes sense. Man, Mick, dude, there's not many people that we go long on this podcast, but people like you, man, it's impossible to keep you at the 25 to 30 minutes, which I'm sure people appreciate. This is not going to be the last time you're going to be on this podcast, man. I appreciate you. Thank you for taking the time. Thank you for what you do for our industry. I want to acknowledge you for that. Keep doing what you're doing, man. Keep doing your podcasts. Keep doing the things you're doing for Premier Strategy Box. Will you be at Indie Tech by chance?
No, that is around my 1-year wedding anniversary. Ooh. And as much as I love you all, I'm not getting in trouble with the wife.
Dude, that's another thing is don't ever do that. Don't. I talked to a buddy of mine. Well, he's just a neighbor or whatever, a friend of mine, and he did something on Mother's Day that you should have never done. And I'm like, all right, well, at least we know that's something that you definitely. This is like a non-negotiable on Mother's Day. These are the things you must do on Father's Day and on anniversaries. A card for me, like for my wife, like it's small. Like she loves cards, and like that's like her love language is writing on a card. And like so, if I don't get her something for my birthday, anniversary, it's just a small card. Like that's all she cares. She doesn't want gifts or flowers. She's like, I just want a card that says that like I'm special that day, and you are. So I appreciate you for doing that, man. I appreciate you being on, and I hope you have a fantastic day, brother.
I appreciate you back, my man.
Thank you, man.